As Bishop of Glasgow and Galloway, I'm delighted to introduce a short presentation on our Lent appeal for this year, which is Waverley Care. We've chosen this because in dealing with people with HIV and hepatitis C and their families and friends and offering them much support, this is a cause dear to the heart of our own church in our care for those in our society who are vulnerable and subject to prejudice and exclusion. I speak to you from the Cathedral, where World AIDS Day has been a major part of its life for many years now. So I'm happy to hand you over to Marion Chatterley, who is going to say more in detail about how Waverley Care works throughout Scotland.
I've been working for Waverley Care for 12 years now, and when I started I was employed as a hospice chaplain. So my work was very much around death and dying. I did a lot of bereavement support. And things, thankfully, have changed over these years, and my job is now very much community-based. I would describe it as being much more of a parish priest model, but working with a very distinctive community. One of the parallels perhaps between some of the work in Waverley Care and something that happens in churches is that we're working with mums and babies. So there's a major issue actually in that one of the routes of transmission for HIV is through breast milk, and so mothers of young babies are encouraged to formula feed. But of course for a lot of people the cost of formula is beyond what they can manage. So we've managed to set up projects in Glasgow and in Edinburgh where we're able to offer formula milk to mums, give them an opportunity to meet with other mums who are HIV positive, and offer some workshops and some opportunities for learning a little more about child development, about spending positive time with your children. And of course, what that really means is we're protecting those babies. You're going to hear the story now of one of the women I know quite well. She wants you to know her as Beth, although that's not her real name. But she can't tell you her real name, she can't show you her face, because she fears the repercussions. And I think that's one of the real sadnesses, one of the real challenges in working with people who are living with HIV. I work with people who are no different from you and me. I work with people who've been infected by a virus that actually affects every single part of their lives. I work with people who live with a secret, who keep such important information about themselves hidden because they fear what people will say, what people will think. I've heard people talk about people living with HIV. I've heard people talk about junkies and prostitutes and people whose lifestyle choices have been inappropriate. And I want to say, I meet ordinary men and women who find themselves in a situation that none of us would choose, but each of them has to find a way to live with.
You've just been told that you have an incurable illness. What if, instead of sympathy, you got rejection, blame and abuse? This is what happened to me, Beth, when I was diagnosed as being HIV positive. It was in the mid-1980s, I was pregnant and in love. Life seemed good until a routine blood test showed I'd contracted HIV from the baby's father. They took me into a small room and the doctor said, "My dear, you have AIDS. Your child will have AIDS. We recommend you have an abortion." After the brutal breaking of the news of my diagnosis and no offer of support, I decided I wanted to keep my child and would carry on as best I could. But the baby's father, friends and my family abandoned me. For the next 19 years I attended hospital checkups every 3 months. The appointments would fill me with terror, and I wouldn't sleep for days beforehand. I was petrified about who might see me or know me, that someone might reveal to the world the secret that I worked so hard to keep. Because I've been HIV positive, I've faced continued rejection by people I thought I could trust. I told my flatmate, who I'd been friends with since I was 4. She moved out that day and left me a nasty letter. More recently, I confided in my minister and a few people at my church, only to find I was no longer allowed to distribute communion or help with teas and coffees. Can you imagine how that made me feel, being excluded even though there was absolutely no risk to anyone else? It was only when I was seriously ill with an age-related illness a few years ago that the ground really fell from under me, and the hospital counsellor suggested I attend a Waverley Care women's support group. It took me all my courage to go along that first week, but I'm delighted I did. It was such a relief to find that, despite feeling isolated and alone, I wasn't. Hearing from other people who'd gone through the same thing as me was amazing. Fairly soon I began volunteering with Waverley Care, and have now even spoken in public about being HIV positive. I still have to keep my identity a secret, as much for my son as for me. He's now 25, and I'm delighted to say he was born free from HIV. Most recently, I've managed to go back to work part-time, something I would never have had the confidence to do without Waverley Care. I now have the confidence to look towards the future, to make plans as I grow older, something I thought would never happen. I've much to be thankful for.
Over the past few years, money that's been given to Waverley Care has allowed us to develop new services to respond to the changing demographic in Scotland. And so as we move into a future where funding is going to be more challenging, a future where none of us knows how secure money can be, it's so important that we find ways to fund services for some of the most vulnerable people within our communities. We're talking about people who need support, people who actually don't manage very well on their own. And your money really can make a difference. Remember, the body of Christ has AIDS. Each and every one of us is affected by each and every other person within our community. And there are people within our churches, there are people within our workplaces, there are people within our home communities who are living with HIV. And that means that each and every one of us is affected.
I'm delighted to commend this appeal for Waverley Care to the generosity of all of you in our diocese, and to encourage every congregation in the diocese to find its own way of supporting this appeal and supporting work that's so important in our society today.